Today we're going to be going over a pretty foundational concept I like to use. This is regarding my philosophy and theory of the way the human body works. I first was introduced to this idea through yoga, and I've continued to look up more about it and try to understand more about it. So the idea is planes, right? We refer to planes in judo and stuff, and frankly I don't really know that much about that, but in yoga you have three planes. You have the sagittal plane, the frontal plane, and the transversal plane. Okay, so I'm going to show you some basic yoga moves that you can do on a yoga mat or on the mat that I like to use to warm up. Okay, so let's start with the sagittal plane. So the sagittal plane is forward and backwards, right? You can imagine basically my hips, my shoulders are going to be in line, and I'm going to be using maybe my hinge joints to move forward and back. Okay, walking or sprinting are sagittal movements. Maybe you could argue that it's not actually, because technically there is a twist, but look at this. So the idea is if I use chaturanga push-ups, right? So when I do chaturanga, forward and back, right? So let's say I'm in a yoga class and I'm doing a push-up, an up dog, back down, and into a down dog. Okay, that is very sagittal. Okay, watch it from the side. Here, push up dog, back down, up, down dog, right? So that's known as a chaturanga, basically. That's usually a cap on a sequence of movements in a yoga class, right? You're moving your spine through its full range of motion through that full plane of space in the sagittal plane. Okay, so now let's look at the frontal plane. Okay, frontal plane is pretty interesting. It's side to side here, a wide split, right? So as long as I'm just here, we're in the frontal plane. Okay, as long as my shoulders and my hips are aligned. Okay, once I add in a twist, we're in the transversal plane, and we'll get to that. Okay, but the idea is to really move. When I focus on the frontal plane, I'm doing just the frontal plane. I'm doing a wide split. Okay, that would be the hamstrings. Another one would be if I'm here, right? Now we're doing, this is a little more complex right here in the frontal plane, because now I have one of my hips is opening up, okay? And my other hip is aligned in the sagittal plane, like a lunge, right? So now this is frontal and sagittal. As long as my spine does not twist, then I stay in the frontal and the sagittal plane right here. But the moment I start twisting, then we're entering the transverse plane. So the moment my shoulders leave like this, for example, is the sagittal and frontal plane. But the moment I start twisting here, now we add the transverse plane. Here's a basic frontal plane, would be also the just the butterfly pose, right? Just like this. Okay. Maybe I could do a reclined one by doing here. This would be the frontal plane still. I feel a large stretch in my glutes, for example, right here. Now let's get into the transversal plane, okay? So this is a little more complex because now your shoulders leave the line of your hips here. It creates a twist, right? So if I was to bisect my body with a square, right? The idea that my shoulder could move to that corner right? And my other shoulder move to the other corner and my hips be touching the other corners. You see what I'm saying? So this is now the transversal plane. And it's important that we move through this to warm up too before we go to a jiu-jitsu class, for example. Or if we're using jiu-jitsu to warm up, then we need to use jiu-jitsu moves at a very low intensity that put us through the transversal plane, right? So let's look at a very basic transversal plane. Look, here, right? I used to do this when I was in lacrosse. This one's pretty simple. Oh, I just felt a pop in my back. So we know that worked, right? We're gonna go the other way. Actually, what's interesting about this is you might be able to argue that one leg is moving through the sagittal plane, another leg is moving through the frontal plane, and my spine is now moving through the transversal plane. These complex twists that you do in yoga are actually complex because they're maybe combining a bunch of planes and moving you through the transversal plane, right? And that's why it's important, I think, to warm up all three planes before we go to a jiu-jitsu class. Why? Because in jiu-jitsu class, you're now forced into these positions, okay? And if you're fighting back, if you're resisting it, and you haven't warmed up your body through those planes, then you risk injury. Maybe it's because it's not in your range of motion, maybe your muscles are too tight, or maybe you have too much range of motion and you need to engage the muscles to hold it, like hold you back in a certain plane, okay? Again, I'm not like a professional with anatomy or physiology or anything. It's just my 2 cents as a competitor and what I like to think about leading up to a competition, and also being able to train for the 15 years that I've been doing it. Things like this matter to me. I highly recommend that you do some research into it if this seems like something you're interested in, and maybe try to apply it to your practice as well.